Our webinar today is on Office 365, the different components that are included, and more specifically around one of the big pieces being SharePoint. Now, Mia and I were doing this live, but we had a few technical difficulties along the way. So the actual presentation is a little bit disjointed, but hopefully you get the gist of it. Really want you to start to see the breadth of Office 365, the capability of it, and more so what it can do for your business. So enjoy. It is a little bit choppy, but we will be hosting this again soon to those that are wanting to see it.
Real-time demo of SharePoint and show you what it can do, how it's being used in organisations, and how we're deploying it for clients. So, Mia, I'll flick over to you.
Brilliant. So let's start at this slide. So look, I think before we jump right into the specifics of Office 365, it's good to just identify what exactly it is from a very high level. And you would have heard, lots of buzz around virtual work and remote work and now, as you can see on the screen, modern workplaces. So quite often Microsoft will refer to Office 365 and their modern, applications as a modern workplace. And for me, I don't get too caught up in the buzzwords, but it simply just means that people can do their work from anywhere at any time on any device. So I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than that. And the beauty of these products that we're going to go through is that it will achieve just that. And the reasons that we as businesses, particularly small to medium businesses, need these solutions is because we need to be able to get more done. We need to be more efficient, lower overheads, and sometimes having an office is one of those things that is very much a nice to have now as opposed to a must have. So it allows us to definitely reduce costs there. And the last point there is flexibility. So when I talk about that, I actually mean it's not just around flexible, workplaces. It's around flexibility for staff, for team members. You can be flexible about where they work from, how they work, the times that they work, and they may work offshore. So these solutions also allow us to do those, and it just means that we can take advantage of a lot more talent too in our work environments. Key elements of this modern workplace. So I'm not going to go into these in a lot of detail. The one that we will go in in more detail is the bottom right one around the applications, programs and IT. But as a bigger picture, a modern workplace is made up of lots of different elements. And so what I mean by that is to have a successful business nowadays, more so than ever, because a lot of these are already things that people need to be aware of to have a successful business, but more so than ever, it's around leading by example, and setting the right theme and culture and flavor for the business from the start, and having a really good intranet or a really good environment for people to be able to experience that and see that is important, particularly when you're working in different locations. Obviously, hiring the right people. Not everyone is great at adaptation or tech advances. So it's just being aware of people that are working for you in that space. Obviously, any business to be scalable and completely 100% efficient is around the processes and procedures. Lots of documentation, lots of easy to follow processes, steps for different roles and tasks. And online presence is really important as well, because people may not see you in person for the duration even of your relationship with the client. So it is really important that we have a really good online presence, because it is most of the time the first thing that people will see of us, whether it's us personally or the business. And then the last element, which is as I say, the one we're going to focus on, is having really good applications, programs, and an IT support behind you. So if we jump into that applications and IT section, that's where we land at Office 365. So very, very quickly, Office 365, for those that don't know, the best way to explain it in my mind is we used to get a disk when we used to buy a laptop or computer, and we used to install Word and Excel and Outlook and all the other Microsoft programs. And so what happened about 6-8 years ago is that Microsoft changed their model to an online subscription model, so much like how Netflix and Stan is now. And with that came a bunch of other applications. And so we'll go into all of those shortly. But what Office 365 does is, as a slide says, is it allows us to collaborate no matter where we are. So it's really built for teamwork. It's intuitive and simplistic. We're able to, in the same instance, also have really great security, which we all know now is a massive thing. And Tom, you can attest to this with how much Wintech's doing in this space. But yeah, the other point there is that it allows us to be creative. It gives us the, playground to share our ideas as well. So it really is a fantastic solution for businesses.
And I think I'll just touch on the security piece there. It is right, whilst everything is, and we've been moving towards that cloud-based model and remote-based model for quite some time, security plays a really key element in that. And what's good to know is that within that Office 365 suite, and obviously extensions to that, we can really start to lock down and secure not only who has access, but things like where they're accessing it from and how they're actually accessing that data. So it is really important to keep that in mind as well as you transition to these type of services.
Yeah, brilliant. So this is a quick little overview, I guess, of what the different applications are used for. So we've got Outlook, which is obviously emails and calendars, SharePoint, which is around content management and intranets or document management, Yammer, which is around whole of organization communications. And then we've got our Office apps that allow us to work together on documentation. And then we've got Teams, which allows us to have that focused chat around projects and different clients and things like that. So a little case study, which just drops that down into a little bit more detail. So obviously, I'm assuming, Tom, people will be able to utilize the slides or watch the recording. So I won't go into this in great detail, but it will give you a good use case potentially to take to.
Yeah, we're recording this, so we'll share it afterwards.
Perfect. So we'll also go through some examples ourselves. So we'll just quickly flick through that one. So with Office 365 and my own personal experience with the projects that I've done, essentially, a modern workplace or any workplace needs to cover off what we've got on the screen. We need to be able to share knowledge, and we need to be able to manage our documents. We need to be able to communicate, whether it's with our clients or whether it's with our team. And we need to be able to educate them and ensure that they're engaged. We need to be able to manage our time and our tasks. We need to manage our client relationships, our sales and our leads. There's always a finance component. And then now more than ever, there's a big focus on data and, how to read that data. So we've got business intelligence, analysis and reporting. And so what we can do then is take this and apply it to what we've got in the Office 365 suite. So let's start with document management. Now, for those of you that do have Office 365, you'll notice these little icons in your portal. You've got OneDrive, which is the little clouds, and you've got SharePoint. So the key difference between these two, because a lot of people find that it gets a bit confusing, and it does, from an outsider looking in without a little bit of explanation, seem like there are quite a few apps that do the same thing, but it's not the case. So the key difference when you're looking at sharing documents and managing knowledge is around the, I guess, the audience. So OneDrive is supposed to be for you. It's supposed to be for really a single user to be working on documentation. So when you put documents into your OneDrive, no one else in the business can see them. Even though it's called OneDrive for Business, that's because it's related to your business email address. So from a business perspective, if you're running a business, you don't really want people keeping business documents in a personal space. So that's where SharePoint comes in. And SharePoint is about being able to, I guess, keep the business IP together in a central location. And then based on security and permissions, we can decide who then is able to use that document, or that documentation, I should say. So that's sort of the best way to explain it. SharePoint is for business files or data. OneDrive is for your data. Does that make sense, Tom? Do you think that sort of clarifies it enough?
Yeah, definitely. That's how we're always looking at it. Is OneDrive is essentially your My Documents folder. For those familiar with your standard Windows desktop, and then once you sort of got that document to a point where it needs to be shared more publicly throughout the business, then it gets moved into the appropriate location on SharePoint. There are a few things obviously you can do and share files with OneDrive, but it's not designed to share with a large audience. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties there, so we've restarted, and we're going to hope to get this presentation put together so we can send you the final bit. So we're going to continue on in a minute once Mia gets back in, and then we'll look to finish off the demo and get this recreated.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're back. Yeah, we might jump to that demo again now, and let's kick that off.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So what we were going to do is basically just mention about Power BI, as in business intelligence, and then we're going to talk or touch on the automation tool that we get with 365, which is Flow, and then we've also got Power Apps. So if we now just share my screen again, what I'll do is just flick back to so just let me know, Tom, if you can still see that again.
Yep, we're back on the screen. Yep, got all that.
Great. Okay. So we touched on forms just briefly there around how much of an awesome tool it is for gathering feedback. So if you're using any tools, we can certainly bring that back into the 365 environment. Saves you money if you're sending out a lot of these. So this is essentially forms, and then we've got all the other apps here that we've touched on already. But what I want to do is just quickly show you an example of how this all comes together in SharePoint. So we're mentioning right at the beginning that SharePoint is about a single source of truth, and it's about knowledge sharing and document management. So in its simplest form, SharePoint is all about presenting single source of truth for documents, but there is so much more that we can do. So you can see this is an example of a SharePoint site. Now, what we have is some really basic links through to particular areas of the business. We can put in vision, values. We can have calendars for events. We can see the activity of documentation. You can have Yammer feeds and so many other things. But before we just go into those, what I wanted to do was just quickly show you really briefly about how SharePoint's designed. Then I'll show you how we can save documents. But basically what we've got is a landing page. Now, if we flick back to the site, this is what we're looking at here. Then we break it into different areas or subsites, as it's called in SharePoint, dependent on the audience. So we might have different areas of the business, obviously relevant information. And the reason we do this is twofold. One, you don't necessarily want everyone in the business seeing people's private staff files. And two, searching. So once you start to get lots and lots of files, if you search at this top site level, or this site, you're going to get results from the whole thing. Whereas if you know that something is in, say, this area, you can search in that area and it will only give you the results of that particular space. So they're the main reasons that we break things down, relevance and permissions. So what you can see then is under each of these areas, we can actually build content. So it's kind of like a website, but a lot more functional and a lot easier to manage. So if we hover over, say, training and support, we'll see a bunch of different abouts. And if we click on training and support in this instance, we have another landing page, but then we also have links to other pages. So information. So think of this like, an FAQ or, processes, procedures. And the cool thing is because everything's online, you can have some instructions and then link it straight through to the related form. So really fun, easy way to present your content. So the other thing to note is remember that we actually are using Microsoft products here. So there's no need for syncing in your traditional file server or file explorer scenario. What we can do is file save as or file open directly into our SharePoint. So you can see here, instead of saving to this PC, what we do is we save straight to SharePoint, and the same with opening. So I've got this particular document open directly from marketing and branding and the marketing area. So if we jump back in here, this is what you can see here. So if I click on marketing, what we'll find is the documents that we're seeing here, like so. So it automatically syncs the parts that you need. So it's
We're having a good run today with our live demos. Now we can see Word. Now we can see Word.
So, sorry about that. It doesn't let me flick between the screens. So what this is letting me do is save straight into SharePoint. So sites-Sharify is where we're at. We're in the marketing branding area, and now I've been able to find the different libraries, and here we have the content that we saw when we were in the browser. So it allows you to save right there. So really, it's just a little bit of a change of behavior, and it's about where we want to access the documents from. So if we go back into the browser now, so let's just switch it again. Sharing. The other thing I'm assuming that you didn't see was this page when I was going through it before, correct?
No, we missed that page.
Yeah, so when I was talking before about breaking it down into the different areas of the business, this is like an example structure, if you will. So what you do is you have the main site, which is what we were looking at before, and then you break it into the different areas of the business. And that's what I was referring to when we were talking about permissions and searching. So back to the browser again. And we've got our document library, where one of the documents are stored. So SharePoint is built of sites, which is what we can see across here. And then under those sites, we actually can see different, what we call libraries, which are where our documents are stored. So every time you add what we call an app or a library, calendar, to a site, to an area, you'll see it in the drop-down navigation, but you also see it when you're in there on the left-hand side. So that's just, I guess, two different ways of seeing or presenting the information to you. So SharePoint sites, these little ones here, these are sort of like your phone. You add them and you have a few apps in there, but to make them functional, you go into the SharePoint App Store and you install a few different ones. So one of them is a document library, which is what we can see here.
What are we looking at? A document library?
Correct. Yep. Marketing and branding. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yep. Cool. So that's where the documents live. But what we can also add as apps are calendars and lists, which we've got an example of a list here. Let's have a little look. So lists are kind of like Excel spreadsheets surfaced on a page, and you can actually put some fun coloring and stuff into them. So this is an example of a client list that you might have, and you could have your bronze, silver, and gold clients, and then you could actually sort by that. But it's quite a nice little visual. But as you can see, there's columns, so you can design them any which way, and then you can actually filter as well. So you can see I might want to see all of the silver clients, and then it will bring up all of those. So lists are a really fun, powerful tool, and they're another app that you can add from the App Store. So nice terminology by Microsoft there, but yeah, these sites are essentially like your phone. You get a few apps, and then you go to the App Store and you add in the ones you want to make each of the different areas of the business functional. So the other thing, we'll jump back to documents shortly, and I'll show you how easy it is to load files in there. But something I wanted to show you, because we went through forms before. So let's have a look. We've got the client feedback form. Now, you might send this link to a client. All right. So we'll go to share, and we'll say anyone with this link can respond, and we'll copy that. So what we want to do is then pretend to be a client and fill that out. So I'm just going to quickly jump into, let's actually put this in the chat so that we can get Tom to fill one out while we're talking. So you fill that out, and what will happen is we'll get the responses, and I just want to show you how that automation tool works that we were talking about with Flow. So what we've actually got, so while Tom's filling that out, is we've got a form. And from that form, when it's completed, we have that little flow working in the background saying, anytime a form is completed from this link, save the information into a list. So if I jump into client feedback now, you should see, as soon as Tom's finished completing it,
I've completed
entry.
That form.
Brilliant. And I should also receive an email as well saying, and there we go. Done. So we can see that that little tool has allowed us to grab that information that Tom's completed, and it's popped it into SharePoint. Then we can also do some filtering as well. And there you go. I get an email response that's just come through saying Tom has completed a form. So that's a really easy example and how quick it can be to use that automation tool. So it's allowing us to really, I think, simplify some of our business processes in that regard. So that's just something I want to quickly show you. So if we go back in now to the document library, or one of the document libraries that allows us to work with files. Another example, if I grab a link here, so remember I was saying at the beginning, we actually can share links to files now because it's in the browser. So there's a copy link function that allows us to share with these different options. Anyone, which means I can share it with anyone in the world and they'll be able to see this particular link file. Then I can say people must have a login with my business to be able to open this file. So if you accidentally share it outside the business, no one else can see it. And then this one actually is really restrictive. It means that if I'm in HR and I have the access to HR but no one else does, or not many other people do, and I forward that on, if people click on that, it's going to recognize their login up the top here, and it's going to stop them from being able to see the file. So there's all different options there. And depending what your needs are, obviously you can adjust these. But I'm going to copy this file, this link now, and I'm going to go back into the presentation again, and I'm going to paste it into there. So from here, if you open that document with me, it'll allow us to work on it together. Now, I think this one that I shared it was it this top one? Can't remember now. Let's have a look. So, which one was it? Oh, it was the same one. That's the link. All right, so let's do that again. Grab that link.
Yeah.
Top one. Beautiful. Okay. So Are we both in here?
You should be.
You there? Oh, now have you edited? Have you clicked edit in yours?
Yeah, I can see that you're in there.
Copy. Oh, it might be just a lag in the internet. Let's see what we've got. Might be because I'm in it here. Let's just close that down. Go back. Jump in it. So I'll just make sure we've got the right one. Pop that back in there. Marketing, website copy. So one of this feature that we're looking at here is really, really powerful. And there we go. It allows us to contact anyone and basically talk through files. Yeah, look, there we go. So we've got the ability to collaborate instantly anywhere in the world. Super, super easy. And they don't need an Office 365 license. But if I hit edit in Word now, because I'm logged in as the full user, I actually still see this guest contribution as an option for me too. Because I've got to flip between screens, I won't jump in there again, but it does allow you to do that in the full version of Word as well. So because we've edited that now, and you can see that Tom's been in there as a guest contributor and he's made a change, what can happen is maybe sometimes you've sent a link, or sometime you will send a link and, Tom might have ruined the document. He could have removed a whole paragraph that I wasn't very happy about him removing. So thanks, Tom, but I'm going to actually have to go back in to before you edited it, and I'm going to revert to a previous version. So every time you open a file and change a file in here, what you get is the ability to roll back to previous versions. So this is a really powerful tool for collaboration in itself, but particularly with external parties if you're going down that path. So if you know that this was the version at that time, you can actually click it and restore it back, and it won't delete anything that Tom's done as such, but what it will do is it will actually allow another version to be created. So there'll be a third version instead of it deleting anything. So if Tom comes back in and says, what about my paragraph that I changed around, then you can actually keep that, and he can have his version, combine them too if you really want to. So that's a really powerful tool. The other brilliant thing you've got is the ability to actually deleted items. So if you delete an item, and again, this is based on permissions, you actually have 3 levels of recycle bin. We don't tend to tell people that. We say there's 2. But what happens is if I go ahead and delete this file now, I can go in and I can retrieve that document. Oh, we're still in it, so it's not going to let me delete it. So if I delete that, I can actually go back now into the recycle bin. So that was through site contents, but I can go into the recycle bin and I can retrieve that. Okay. Now, because I am the site owner, you'll notice that I can see everything else as well. But if I deleted something and I was just a member, so remember there's 3 types of permissions. I won't go into too much detail, but if I am having a bad day and I'm just a standard user and I hit delete again, what will happen is the owner of SharePoint, which you'll assign to a few people, can still retrieve it. And then if the owner of the SharePoint is having a bad day, there's actually another level of recycle bin down below as well. So once a file is in here, where I'm going with this is, 1, it's got a centralized recycle bin. 2, if you're having a really bad day, a shocker, you can still get your files back. So that combined with version control, brilliant tool.
Yeah, we also look to add an additional layer on those as well for some clients where they need that extra level of protection, where we back it up outside of SharePoint as well, so we can get that data back in the worst of worst case scenarios.
Yeah, and that's so important now, Tom, with the way security is going. So you can never be too careful. Remember, really, business, the most important thing in business, aside from the people, is obviously the content, your IP, your data. So, and now with all these updated security regulations and requirements, it's important, very, very important that we, are really tight with these sorts of things. So really easy to work with. What I want to just quickly touch on now is bringing files across. Now, because I've got to flick through the different screens, I just want to show you quickly what I'm actually going to do here. So, standard file explorer, you can see. We can highlight these files like so, and to bring them into our environment, it's literally a matter of dragging and dropping. So we've got those documents highlighted. You bring them across. You can see that the screen has changed. Drop those in. You can see here 4 items uploading, and there they are. That easy. So pretty sure most people will be able to manage that. It couldn't be easier, really. Dragging and dropping them in. So that's one way to add files. The second way is obviously creating them straight from the plus new button. Or the other way is what we touched on at the beginning there around creating them in Word and file save as straight into your SharePoint environment. So you've got three basic options, and the same with editing. You can edit in the browser just by clicking the file, or you can right click and choose open in Word or Excel or whatever the program is, and it'll open it directly onto your computer. So look, as you know, I can talk all day about it, but this is a really quick overview of how it works. And I think that the other thing that might be worth just going through is how easy it is to work with Yammer. So, because I know we were talking before about embedding all these different things on pages, there's another example that we can touch on briefly around what that actually looks like. So I'm just going to right click, open quickly a new session. So while I'm doing this, Tom, do you think there's anything else that, it's important for the audience to sort of understand at this point?
No, I think that's look, as you touched on, there is so much in it. It's we could probably go for hours going through all the different bits and pieces. But I think that's, from my perspective, I think that's given everyone a really good overview of what it is and where they can start thinking about using it. And I think that's probably the key thing, is that sometimes it can feel, because as you've seen, there is so many different parts and options within there, it can probably feel a little overwhelming, and knowing where to start. But just starting small, getting an intranet page, getting some policies and procedures, and then thinking about how you can sort of do things differently within your business and that business workflow. But some of the cool things like forms and everything like that, that's unreal. Just being able to create those forms, send them out to anyone, anywhere, to fill out and capture that data. So there's heaps of different things you can start thinking about.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So can you see my screen there now?
It's just got a blank page, just got the Chrome browser.
Cool. I'll just quickly reshare it, and I'll just touch on just a few final things. But yeah, look, I think, as you said, the key here is to start simply and do a bit of a stock take around the business. Ask people what they're having issues with. What are their problems? Is it, not knowing where the single source of truth, the main file is, or is it something to do with, having to manually enter some sort of data into the system that they might otherwise be able to capture through a form? So the thing is, there's always some problems that people are experiencing. If we can show them how this can solve it, then it really helps. So if we just scroll down a little bit further, I just wanted to show you how the Yammer feed looks inside a SharePoint page. So you can see here, it really is kind of like Facebook. You can post something, you can like it, and you can share it as GIFs, and you can put links and those sorts of things. So it's a really fun tool. The other thing you've got here is when we were talking about stream earlier, this is what a stream channel looks like. So this one's called SharePoint How To for end users. And it's got a bunch of videos in there just to show people basically what we've been through today. Working with Planner using Stream, Yammer, sharing and collaborating. And so you could do that for any of your business processes and put them in Stream and then just surface them on a SharePoint page.
And you can see we can pull data from anywhere. Mia's got the Twitter feed in there and things like that as well. So where there's common data that you want to be able to pull in for your team, it can all be shown there. So it's not just about that Microsoft ecosystem either. It's what do you need to see and what do your team need to see? We can start to think about how to bring those things in. So it is a single point of access.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. I think that's
great.
That's probably enough for people's brains in one setting.
No, that's great. And yeah, thanks very much, Mia. I think as we've sort of all seen, it is quite a broad product set there. And this is Office 365. And I don't think we even touched on half of the little apps and plugins that are there that can be used. So it's quite a powerful platform, but the key is don't get overwhelmed. Start simply and start using it and scaling up. And that's the key thing is look at where you can just adopt different areas in your business, start small and start spreading it through. So that's Office 365 and more specifically SharePoint.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mia. And look, we know we had a few technical difficulties through this, but we have recorded it, hopefully. So we'll put it all together and we'll send out a link with the finished product. And look, if there's any questions, feel free to contact myself or Mia at Wintech, and we'll certainly help you out. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
See ya.